Power isn't in the hands of the crowd, it's held by the individual. Those who gather in numbers, clinging to the comfort of others, reveal their dependence. They dress their weaknesses as strength, wrapping themselves in chains they call bonds. But the lone wolf sees what the herd never will. Real power is born from solitude, from the quiet that only comes when you're on your own. To stand apart is to cast off the weight of other people's fears, their failures, and walk the path of greatness free from those burdens. The lone wolf doesn't need the safety of numbers, because safety is the crutch of the weak. In being alone, there's clarity. The noise of the crowd dulls senses, clouds the mind with distractions. But when you're alone in the dark, that's when your vision sharpens, your instincts come to life. The lone wolf slips through the shadows, unseen, unheard, moving like a blade slicing through the night. No one else's call needs answering, no strength compromised for the sake of some false peace. In solitude, the only voice that matters is your own. The only orders you follow are the ones you give yourself. The lone wolf doesn't know betrayal, doesn't suffer false loyalty, because there are no promises to break. Alliances, they're built on shaky ground, made of empty words destined to fall apart. Leaning on others leaves you exposed, vulnerable. But alone you have control. Control of your mind, your body, every move, every strike. To walk solo is to walk free, with power undivided and undiluted. Those who stand together fall together, but the lone wolf endures. In the silence of isolation lies a strength the pack will never grasp. The herd dreads the quiet, unable to function without the constant noise of others. But the lone wolf feeds on that stillness, sharpening its edge with every moment alone. While the crowd hesitates in the face of the unknown, the lone wolf adapts, grows, becomes more than any one beast. The power isn't shared, it's taken, it's dominated, it's held tight. And when the dust settles, it's the lone wolf left standing unbroken, watching as the herd scatters to the wind. Victory is owned by the one who needs nothing. Walking alone means claiming every win, every triumph as your own. No need to split the spoils, no need to bow to anyone else's will. The lone wolf reigns supreme. The lone wolf takes what it wants, bowing to no one. The pack's driven by fear of the unknown, fear of being left behind. But the lone wolf knows the truth, fear is nothing but an illusion. In solitude, there's nothing to lose. Walking alone means the only battle you face is the one within. And once you've conquered that, nothing outside can stand in your way. The lone wolf is patient, a master of the long game. While the pack charges blindly into chaos, desperate to stay ahead in numbers, the lone wolf waits. Watching, calculating, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Every step is measured, every choice is sown. The wolf understands that real power isn't found in a rush for victory, but in the steady endurance that outlasts the storm. Time is the lone wolf's greatest weapon. While others tire, the lone wolf stays sharp, its hunger only growing in isolation. There's a raw beauty in walking alone, relying on no one, answering to no one, rising and falling by your own hand. That's the essence of true strength. The lone wolf doesn't seek applause, doesn't need the approval of the pack. Its power lies in independence, knowing its strength is pure, untouched by the weaknesses of others. While the herd cries out for recognition, the lone wolf moves in silence, unstoppable. The world fears what it can't control, and nothing terrifies more than the one who walks alone. Solitude isn't a curse, it's a weapon. Being alone means being unshackled, wielding power that's entirely yours. Those who cling to the pack are doomed to fall, weighed down by the baggage of others. But the lone wolf rises free, unburdened by the frailties of the many. When it's all over, when the dust finally settles, the last howl you hear won't be from the crowd. It'll be the lone wolf standing victorious, having conquered everything without ever needing anyone. Inner conflict, it's born from weakness, from that split between what you want and what you're afraid of, between ambition and doubt. It festers in those who cling to the illusion of safety, those who tie their fate to the will of others. That internal war is fueled by the chains we choose to wear, chains of expectation, of obligation, of compromise. Freely on others, and you divide yourself, torn between serving the herd and feeding your soul's hunger. It's that inner conflict that weakens the spirit, tearing at the mind until you're bound by doubt and hesitation. But solitude, it strips those chains clean off. Alone, there's no one to serve but yourself, no expectations to drag you down. The inner war that once raged in the crowd's presence goes quiet. The noise fades into nothing. In solitude, the battlefield reveals its true face, a space where your darkest instincts meet crystal clear clarity, where doubt is nothing more than a shadow waiting to be devoured. Alone, you can face every fear, every weakness without the distraction of anyone else's influence. In that silence, the war within stops being a struggle and becomes a sharpening. The fuel behind that conflict. Fear of rejection, of failure, of being left behind by those you thought you needed. But when you're on your own, those fears lose their teeth. There's no one to let down, no one to betray, no obstacles in your way. The fear which divided you becomes a weapon, something to be wielded, a source of power. The lone bull doesn't run from fear, masters it, turning it into fuel for its fire. Driving ambition higher and pushing hunger for power even further. When you walk alone, the path ahead is clear. There's no web of loyalties to navigate, no need to juggle your desires with someone else's whims. In solitude, the focus is razor-sharp, unyielding. Every choice is yours. Every consequence is yours to own, no one else to answer to. And with that kind of clarity, victory becomes inevitable. It's not a question of if but when. The solitude becomes the forge where inner conflict gets turned into raw strength. Weaknesses that once tore you apart, burned away. In the silence of being alone, you become the master of your own world, shaping every thought, every impulse to your will. Without the noise of others, without the weight of their judgments, you unlock the power to rise above the war within, to come out of the chaos stronger, sharper, and unbreakable. Victory doesn't come from dodging conflict. It comes from mastering it. In solitude, nothing stands in the way of that mastery, no voices leading you off track, no comforts dulling your instincts. The lone wolf knows that real triumph isn't about avoiding the inner war. It's about diving headfirst into it, using it to elevate beyond the ordinary. Alone, the mind sharpens like a blade, cutting clean through every obstacle with brutal precision. To every battle fought inside is a win outside in the real world. In solitude, that conflict isn't a burden, it's a weapon. Every doubt gets smashed, every fear unraveled and understood. What used to divide you now drives your ambition, feeding a hunger that grows stronger with each second of solitude. The lone wolf isn't just a warrior, it becomes a force, something primal, a power built not by the strength of numbers but by an iron will. And when victory finally comes, and it always does for those who master their inner chaos, it's complete. It's not shared, not diluted by others' contributions. It's a triumph that's pure, born from the deepest source of power, the self. Solitude leads to victory because it strips away everything weak, everything that splinters your focus. To alone you become whole, unbreakable, a creature driven by singular purpose and relentless ambition. And when you stand on the ruins of your enemies, it's not their defeat that matters, it's your mastery over yourself. It's the conquest of your own inner shadows. Without solitude, greatness is a mirage. No legendary work, no lasting victory was ever done in the midst of others. The noise of the pack smothers the brilliance that lives in silence. Creating something truly formidable demands the isolation of the mind, a kind of laser focus only solitude can give. When surrounded by the crowd, your essence gets watered down, your thoughts scattered, your inspiration tainted by the influence of weaker minds. But in solitude, there's none of that contamination, just clarity, just raw potential thriving in the quiet. The greatest works, the greatest victories are born in the darkness of isolation, shaped in the quiet agony of the self. It's in these moments, when there's no voice but your own, that creation becomes something more than just effort. It becomes an act of will, of power, of defiance against everything and everyone that ever tried to pull you away from your path. The lone wolf creates, conquers, and claims all without the need for the herd's approval, without the weakness that comes from relying on others. It knows that standing alone, moving through the shadows, leads to a type of victory the pack will never know. True power doesn't come from being surrounded by others, it comes from within. It's the ability to stand tall in the silence, to thrive in the stillness, to forge a destiny that's entirely your own. The lone wolf doesn't need applause or recognition because its strength is self-contained. Its power is pure, and when it strikes hard without hesitation, without remorse. The herd fears solitude because they can't survive in the quiet, but the lone wolf, it feeds on it, it thrives on it. Solitude sharpens it, hones its instincts, clears its mind of every distraction. When the time comes to act, a lone wolf is ready, prepared to outlast the storm, to rise above the noise, to claim victory without ever breaking stride. In the end, it's not the herd that stands victorious, it's the lone wolf, because it was never bound by the limitations of others. It was never distracted by their fears or failures. It moved with purpose, with clarity, with an unwavering focus that the pack could never understand. Victory belongs to those who stand alone, to those who embrace the silence, who use it to refine their power. When you walk alone, your strength is undivided, your will unchallenged. The lone wolf endures. It outlasts, it conquers. And when all is said and done, it's the lone wolf's howl that echoes in the night, a sound of triumph, of mastery, of power that cannot be tamed, cannot be broken, cannot be touched by the weakness of the many. Without solitude, the mind becomes fragile, easily manipulated, led astray by the empty voices of those unworthy of influence. But in isolation, the mind sharpens like a blade, honing its focus until every thought and action is laced with purpose. Greatness demands the sacrifice, the severing of all distractions, the rejection of anything that attempts to dull the fire of ambition. Solitude strips away the excess, cutting to the core of what must be achieved. The greatest works, the most monumental achievements, did not emerge from the warmth of companionship. They were born in the silent struggle, in the relentless grind behind closed doors, where the Creator fought not against others, but against their own limitations. It is in this profound isolation that the chains that bind lesser minds are broken, where one rises to a level of mastery beyond the reach of the ordinary. Solitude isn't merely a condition, it is the cost of brilliance. Without solitude, mediocrity thrives. The crowd seeks comfort, seeks validation. These are the enemies of greatness. To rise above, to create something that defies the sands of time, one must abandon the safety of the herd and walk alone. Only in that aloneness does the soul find its strength. Only in isolation does the mind discover its hidden reserves of power. No great masterpiece was ever born from a place of comfort. In solitude, in the cold, ruthless embrace of isolation, the self is forced to push beyond its boundaries, to stretch toward something greater, something that stands apart from the trivial. Greatness does not allow for distractions. It demands a singular focus, a relentless pursuit of perfection. This pursuit is only sustainable in the stillness of solitude, where there is no noise, no interference. In this quiet, the mind expands, thoughts flow freely, and the work begins to form, not as a mere task, but as an extension of the Creator's will. Without solitude, the work is diluted, weakened by external influence, by the desires of those who cannot fathom the weight of creation. Solitude is more than just the absence of others, it's the full presence of the self. It's the relentless confrontation with one's potential. Only in silence can the mind dive deep enough to unearth the seeds of great. In solitude, the work transcends effort. It becomes a testament to power, a reflection of the iron will that can only manifest when the world is shut out. There is no room for greatness in the presence of others, no space for brilliance where compromise exists. Without solitude, the mind stays tethered, held back by the limits of those who lack the vision to see beyond the surface. It survives through its own strength, takes down obstacles by its own hand, roaming untamed without the need for approval or authority. Solitude is the natural state of the powerful, for it answers to no one, bows to nothing. It becomes a creature of raw, untouchable power, driven by hunger and instinct, free from the softness that binds the weak to one another. In solitude, the beast thrives unchallenged, unstoppable. Solitude reveals the truth. Greatness comes not from the collective, but from the individual who dares to stand alone, who turns inward and uses isolation to build an empire from within. Every distraction removed, every external influence silenced, this is where mastery is born. It's not found in noise of the crowd, but in the quiet conviction of the lone wolf who roams the wilderness free and untethered, claiming victory with each step forward.